Hi, everyone. Welcome to Healing the Inner Child Book Club. I'm June Hebrew, the author of Healing the Inner Child. I'm a psychotherapy practitioner and also a life coach. And today or tonight, we will be talking about healing, the concept of healing and the inner child, and the concept of pure love, and also the concept of courage. And I think one of the most asked questions whenever I would conduct my psychotherapy sessions with my clients is that how can I heal, right? How can I heal? One of the questions that I would hear from a lot of people. And the only answer I could the only answer I could provide is when your past or when the future no longer haunts you. Now, healing comes in many forms and it is different from, or for a lot of people, from one individual to another. And there's no one straight definition for it. But you know you were healed when you are no longer hurting and when you are no longer hurting the people around you as well. You know you are healed when you've got peace. Now, it's a bit tricky actually because some people might say, I still hurt sometimes, or sometimes I still hurt people around me without me meaning to do it. And it's all part of the process. Healing is also a choice. It is both a state and a choice. When we say it is a state, it means that there are times when you're in a state of healing or simply feeling that you have been healed. There's healing, but there is also this sometimes it's also a choice that you'll have to make in the present moment. Would you choose healing in the present moment or you choose wound? And and it's not easy for some people actually to choose healing because the wound is somehow identified with them already or they identify with the wound. Hi Joanne. Okay, we have Joanne watching and we also have BP. Okay, good evening, good evening. Thank you for watching our live cast. Okay, and it's not easy for a lot of people to choose healing. And while they may say that they choose healing, subconsciously they are still choosing the wound because it's hard for them to let go of it because they have identified themselves with it. And so it's hard for them to let go of the wound because now the question would be, who would I be without my wound? And that is uncomfortable for some people, most especially for the ones who have identified with their wound, for the ones who have identified with their weaknesses. It's not easy to let go of what identifies them. And healing also happens, right? Most especially when you don't identify with it, or there is already a detachment from the wound that happened. Yes, that's correct. Sometimes it's hard to let go of the wound. Well, actually, most of the time, it's really hard to let go of the wound. Just earlier, I had a friend who came over, okay, and he since he knows I'm a practicing psychotherapist, he came in, talked about his breakup, but then surprisingly, he mentioned to me right after 4 days, he woke up the next day. He was just feeling peaceful and that he was no longer attached to his girlfriend anymore. There's no attachment anymore. There's this part of letting go. And I asked, how did that happen? I just realized that it's not who I am, that I have been so attached to the idea of us being together, and now I see myself not being with her, pursuing other things. And if you Listen to the kind of language. It's so exciting because the shift in the emotion actually happened when there is no more identification with what caused the wound, and there's no more identification with the wound itself. That the future that he has in mind is no longer with this person, is no longer with his ex girlfriend. And for him, there was peace. There was a lot of hope with what he was saying. And he was ready to finally let go. Now, in his case, he even mentioned of how he wanted to puke, right? When he was experiencing it, he even mentioned that there was a time when he collapsed. All right, imagine this all happened in the span of 4 days. He collapsed. All right, he had nightmares because of this breakup. But after 4 days, finally, all right, and lucky for him, okay, he was able to let go of it in that in that short span of time. That he suddenly woke up without identifying with what hurt him anymore. And that's a wonderful thing. And that's a wonderful thing. So you see, healing comes in many, many forms. Now, apparently, all right, he's scared of abandonment as well because he was left by his parent when he was young. And right after 7 years, this parent who left him actually came back to his life. But then the mark that the leaving of his parent left to him when he was younger was still there. And he did not want to experience the hurt anymore, but he experienced it again. The fear that he had when he was just a child to be left, he was able to overcome it, but there were still some remnants inside him. There were still some triggers inside him that he wasn't able to address. And so when we were talking, he was saying, I promised myself, okay, no one would ever leave me again. But you see, you can't make a promise for other people. I make a promise to myself that no one will ever leave me again. And that's a very hard promise to keep because you are making a promise for other people. But now, all in the end of our conversation, he realized that he'd like to work on himself and he'd like to become a better person. And he mentioned also that there were very, very few people who actually knew about what happened to him. And those people are the ones very, very close to him who knew about the whole thing that have happened, the many things that have happened. And so I asked him, so what are your realizations? And he mentioned, I need to work on myself. I want to be a better person. I want to be a person who is whole. Because I think I experienced that emotion of lack because I felt that I wasn't whole with my ex girlfriend. Or I felt that I wouldn't be whole anymore if my ex girlfriend left me, which happened. And so he felt that a part of him was stolen away from him. And so right now, I asked, do you think you're whole? I'm on my way there, he mentioned. But here's the thing, we are all whole. We are just having a hard time accepting it because the call of the drama is sometimes stronger. The ego, the call of the ego is very, very strong. When I say call of the ego, it's call of the pain body, the mental body, the emotional body. Sometimes it's addictive for some people to dwell on their dramas because that's all they have. Without their dramas, okay, without their dramas, they don't know who they are. or perhaps they weren't able to accept their life without the dramas. And so they create dramas for themselves because they want it, their ego wants it, because their drama is so useful for them. Maybe for calling other people's attention to them, or maybe for getting what they want. And that also springs back from your inner child. Okay, that also springs back, by the way, from your inner child when there's a lot of acting out that we do. And now, when we say drama, okay, I'm not saying that it's. I'm not actually saying that it's bad to have drama sometimes. Okay, because we are all human beings. We are bound to experience some dramas. But here's something that I don't want people to get stuck on. That we avoid the dramas because sometimes we don't avoid them. We actually just listen to the drama in our head. And when we listen to the dramas in our head, that's when we actually get to understand what's going on. It's not entirely denying yourselves of the emotion. It's not entirely resisting what's going on. It's basically just simply observing about what's going on and finding yourself in the story and also the pattern of your responses. And when you're able to identify the pattern of your responses into that repeated drama that's happening in your life, then healing can begin. When you're able to simply observe your dramas instead of getting sucked into the entanglement of all the dramas around you, then healing can actually happen. Healing starts to happen. And so in the book, it's quite a lot of process for me to go back to my inner child and go back to facing what I have faced when I was a child. One of the many things that I think I had a hard time mastering was embracing pure courage because it takes a lot of courage. And actually, that's my first chapter. And I remember Karen asking me. Karen, by the way, is the our founder, okay, the founder of Online Healing Community. I remember Karen asking me, June, why courage? Why is it that for you courage is the first step? And I told her, for me, it's courage simply because when you tell a story that exposes a lot of your wounds, you would be bound by a lot of people's judgment. When you tell a story that had or that has shame and guilt that accompany such story, it's not easy to open up. So it's all about courage. But even courage, I had to really dive deeper into the kind of intent that I have. Where will I root my courage from? Will I root my courage from simply being right? Will I root my courage simply by using my story as an alibi for my situation right now? And it was for me an interesting process and a fulfilling process because I did not want to write the book have with me in mind as a victim. I want to write the book with me in my mind as I'm writing the book as a victor. But while I was writing through it, sometimes it's hard to picture how to be a victor in that story. So eventually I had to choose. Eventually I had to choose. How do I become a victor here? How do I become a victor here? But even when there's victory, it's still hard for me. Okay, it was still hard for me to expose that kind of wound that I had in the past because I was not ready for what Brene Brown would call vulnerability hangover. What if a lot of people read about this? And what if people do not really get the whole story? And what if people would just remember the bad things about the story and not remember the many, many good things that happened in the story? What if people pick some things there to throw at me? What There are so many what ifs. And so I was telling myself, all right, so you have so many what ifs, you have so many buts, you have so many ifs, but why are you writing this? What is at the deepest intention of yourself? And then I found out it was just about love. It was just about pure love. But I wrote the story because the story is a love story. It is actually about love. And many readers might not get it when they are browsing through the beginning chapters of the book. But at the end, they will realize that it is a love story. It is a story of love. It is a story not necessarily just of being a victorious person. It is a story of constantly choosing love, and from that love springs courage. Or maybe it's vice versa. The okay, Joanne said courage is acknowledging your vulnerability and to recognize that the vulnerability no longer serves you. Correct. And it's hard, okay, to be vulnerable sometimes. Okay, it's hard to be vulnerable sometimes because again we are afraid of what people might say about us or the judgment that people might throw at us. But what I realized is that if your intentions are hooked on pure love, it's so easy to become courageous. It's so easy to practice courage because you know that you're doing it out of love. Because you know that you're doing it out of love. And Joanne is right. From courage springs vulnerability. And even then, I did not understand what vulnerability was, or I would say I still don't get the whole picture of it. Vulnerability is not oversharing, and vulnerability is not about sharing with everyone. Vulnerability is simply acknowledging your own emotions at this very moment and telling yourself it's okay that I'm having these kinds of emotion. Vulnerability also chooses its correct audience, its proper audience. And for me, that's a very, very powerful learning that I now choose the people that I talk to whenever, right, whenever I am undergoing some challenges. Healing is a wonderful process, it's an interesting process. To get to know your inner child is an even more amazing, interesting, and wonderful process. And so I hope that you grab a copy of the book, Healing the Inner Child. And I also hope that you get to sit down with me and talk about your own inner child or talk to me about anything under the sun. With that, I'd like to leave you on a personal note. I'd like to leave you with a personal quote that I have repeated in my head many, many times. You are enough. I am enough. You are enough. Everyone around you is actually enough. And everything is perfect. Everything is going according to what is supposed to happen. And that's it. I'd like to end this with a wonderful wish for everybody. A wish for the healing of your inner child. Again, welcome to the Healing the Inner Child Book Club, We will be doing this weekly this April, every Friday from 8 o'clock to 8:30. And we hope that you share the link of this friends also to be with us every Friday from 7:30 or from 8 o'clock to 8:30. If you have any questions, one question is actually, I only have 3 minutes left, or I think 1 minute left. All right. And so if you have a question, maybe you can type it so we can see it. Hi, BP. Rosanna, thank you. Oh, Rosanna, hi. Louis Reese. Okay. Valor over courage. Wow, that's interesting. Jovi, hi. Right. We have Rosalina Abog. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so if you don't have any more questions, all right, maybe my question to you is where are you now with your healing journey? So that's it, Karen. Let's watch this video. You've got to heal if you want to make your life work. And that's the reason why Healing the Inner Child is written, for you to be assisted in your own healing. Healing the Inner Child will tell you that it's possible for you to heal no matter what you've gone through in your life. So click the link below to download the free chapter.
How does it work for people who don't know how sound healing works?
Two ways how na-affect tayo ng sound. One is psychoacoustic. When we hear the sound, our brain entrains to the sound para siyang sumasabay. It slows down, mag-entrain din ng ating breathing, mag-entrain yung ating heart rate, and then pag bumagal na lahat, dadaloy na ng maayos yung ating dugo, the nervous system would flow smoothly. We could also feel the sound. So that's naman vibroacoustic. Especially when nasa sound bath tayo, for example, ng live, yung vibration nararamdaman natin. And it affects us sa DNA level, sa cellular level.
So, two things. First, we follow the sound. Like you said, entrainment. Second, by vibration. The vibration also affects.
Here are our programs for the week. See you in class!